Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we've gathered some really fascinating insights for you, all centered on understanding a truly critical time, eighth grade.
Right. Ages 13, 14 typically.
Exactly. Think of this as, well, your guide to getting what's really happening with kids at that age. It's that final, often intense year of middle school.
People call it the end before the beginning.
Yeah, that phrase really captures it. Our mission today is to unpack this big transition.
It's such a unique time. They're not little kids anymore, not in their own minds anyway, but high school and, real independence still feels a way off.
Caught between two tides, as one source put it.
That's it. It fits perfectly. You feel that emotional weight, that kind of forward-looking pressure, but also sometimes surprising moments of self-awareness starting to peek through.
Okay, let's jump right in. One concept that really stood out was this idea of the identity lock-in trap. Sounds like eighth grade is a real pressure point for figuring out who they are.
Oh, absolutely. The sources we looked at really highlight how they start to internalize labels around then. Things based on, well, all sorts of stuff.
Like school.
Yeah, school performance is a big one. I'm the smart kid. Or maybe I'm just bad at school. Then there's social roles. I'm the funny one, or feeling like nobody even sees me.
And body image, gender, sexuality,
Yeah.
this must be huge too.
Huge. And the pressure can make them feel like whatever label fits right now or whatever they're exploring has to be permanent. Like, this is it.
And that's the trap, right? Not the exploring, but the feeling that it's forever.
Exactly. That's the core danger. Believing these definitions are set in stone, it stops being exploration and starts feeling like a life sentence, almost.
Wow. So it's not just teenage moodiness. These early ideas about themselves can really stick.
They really can. It can become a springboard, sure, but it can also be a major limitation down the road if they get locked into that fixed thinking. Creates a lot of anxiety.
That totally makes sense. So how can adults help them avoid getting stuck in that trap? Any practical tips from the material?
Yeah, there were some good ones. One great question to ask is something like, what's something you used to believe about yourself that you don't anymore?
Oh, I like that. It shows change is possible.
Exactly. It gets them thinking about how identity can shift. And then just consistently reinforcing, you're not locked in, you're still figuring things out, still building who you are. That can be really powerful.
Okay, good stuff. Let's shift gears a bit. Developmentally, what's happening? Sounds like a massive transformation across the board.
It really is. Cognitively, you see big leaps. Their reasoning, their ability to plan, critical thinking, it all gets stronger.
They start seeing longer-term consequences.
Yeah, much more clearly.
Hmm.
And self-reflection gets deeper, too. They're really starting to build their own moral compass, their own values.
But there's always a but at this age, isn't there?
Yes. The but is that their executive functions, organizing, planning, impulse control, that part of the brain is still seriously under construction.
So they can think more logically, but maybe don't always act that way.
You got it. Impulses can still win out, especially when emotions are running high or there's social pressure, which, let's face it, is pretty often.
Yeah, and emotionally, I imagine it's pretty intense.
Intense is the word. Self-esteem can bounce all over the place. Romantic feelings, sexual curiosity, that all ramps up significantly.
And they're caught in that classic teen dilemma, right? Wanting to fit in, but also wanting to be themselves.
Absolutely. That push and pull between belonging and authenticity is huge. Plus, they're starting to want more emotional independence from family, even though they absolutely still need that structure and support.
Okay, and physically, puberty's usually in full swing.
Yeah, for most.
Yeah.
And those hormonal changes, they have a big impact. Mood swings, tiredness, and definitely more awareness and sometimes insecurity about their bodies changing.
Leads to a lot of comparing themselves to others, I bet.
Constantly. Peers, influencers online. It's a tough landscape for body image right now.
With all this going on inside and out, it makes sense that the material talks about the rise of invisible pain. That phrase really stuck with me.
It's powerful, isn't it? This is often when they experience their first real deep heartbreaks. Could be romantic, could be best friend, could even be shifts in family dynamics.
And the pressure just keeps mounting.
Definitely. Pressure to perform school, activities, socially. It all gets heavier. And sadly, this is also an age where we see anxiety, depression, and sometimes even suicidal thoughts starting to emerge more frequently.
But it's often hidden. They get good at masking it.
Very good. They might brush things off,
Yeah.
whatever. Or act out sarcasm, being cold, defiant. Or sometimes they just check out, disengage from things they used to care about.
So you can't just wait for them to fall apart. What can adults do proactively?
The key is direct, Open communication. Don't tiptoe around it. Ask them straight up sometimes, have you had any days lately where things just felt too heavy?
Just open the door.
Exactly. And if they do open up, the absolute crucial thing is to validate what they're feeling. Don't minimize it. That example, first heartbreaks feel brutal. You're not weak for feeling that hard. That's the kind of validation they need.
Yeah, respecting that their feelings are huge to them.
Right. It's their reality. And speaking of their reality, their whole moral world is shifting too, isn't it?
That's another big one. Their values starting to maybe diverge from their parents.
Yes.
Yeah.
Could be a bit bumpy. They might start questioning things like religion, politics, family rules they always accepted.
Or getting really passionate about social issues.
Absolutely. Speaking up about injustice, maybe even pointing out things you do or believe that they suddenly disagree with.
Which can feel a little personal sometimes for parents.
It sure can. But the sources frame this really well. It's not just rebellion for rebellion's sake. It's actually ethical development. They're actively building their own sense of right and wrong.
So how do you handle that without shutting them down?
Celebrate the thinking. Even if you don't love the conclusion, say things like, wow, I'm glad you're thinking so hard about this. Ask for their opinion. Okay, how would you handle this?
And maybe even admit you don't have all the answers.
Yeah. Sharing your own shifts, like, I used to think X about that, but lately I'm not so sure. That builds respect and keeps the conversation going.
Okay. Now, the sources touched on some general trends, boys versus girls. Important disclaimer. These are generalities, right?
Super important disclaimer. Individuals vary hugely. But yeah, some patterns often show up.
Like with body image.
Right. Girls might be dealing more with pressures around being seen as sexual too early or intense insecurity, sometimes leading to eating concerns. Boys might worry more about physical development, height, strength, feeling behind their peers.
And friendships look different sometimes.
Often, yeah. Girls' friendships can be incredibly close, really intense, but also maybe more prone to drama. Boys' groups might form more around shared activities, maybe sometimes avoiding those deeper emotional talks.
What about early romantic stuff and just emotions in general?
Again, generalizing, but girls might tie romance more closely to emotional intimacy and clear labels early on. Boys might feel more confused or nervous about the emotional side of things.
And expressing feelings.
Girls might sometimes feel pressure to kind of self-silence to keep the peace in their group. Boys might be more likely to externalize big feelings through things like humor or denial or just pulling back. But again, these are just trends, not rules for any specific kid.
Got it. Let's talk school. Academically, what's the focus in 8th grade?
It's definitely a step up. ELA, English Language Arts, moves into more complex stuff like argumentative writing, digging deeper into literature, formal essays.
Math gets serious too, right? Algebra.
Usually algebra or maybe a strong pre-algebra. Lots of graphing, equations, multi-step problem solving. Science often brings in chemistry basics, physics concepts, more hands-on lab work.
And social studies, civics, history.
Yep, often civics, government, U.S. history, maybe starting to look at bigger world systems. And then there's usually health or advisory, covering really crucial things. Sexual health, mental health, peer pressure, how to navigate the online world responsibly.
So the academic demands clearly increase.
Absolutely. Yeah. And the expectation is they'll be more independent learners. But going back to what we said earlier.
Their executive function is still playing catch-up.
Exactly. So they might struggle with managing it all, the planning, the deadlines, staying organized, even if they understand the actual subject matter.
Which leads right into that academic fatigue plus future panic thing the sources mentioned. They hear all these messages.
Oh, yeah. High school counts. You're not a kid anymore. Everything matters now.
But their brain isn't quite wired for that level of future planning and pressure yet.
Right. It's a mismatch. And you see the fallout. Suddenly forgetting homework all the time, procrastinating, getting stuck in shame, spirals over small mistakes.
Or going the other way, extreme perfectionism.
That too. Or just completely checking out, like, why bother? It's a defense mechanism.
So how do we support them without just adding more pressure?
Focus on resilience, not perfection. Normalize messing up. Okay, you bombed that quiz. Everyone flops sometimes. What's the plan to get back on track? That's way more helpful.
And offering help, but not taking over.
Yeah. Scaffolding. Looks like you're stuck on this project. Want to brainstorm a plan together? Or do you want to try tackling it solo first? Give an agency, but offer the support.
Okay. Outside of school, the social world. Notoriously tricky in 8th grade.
Understatement. Reputation feels huge, like it's welded to their identity, especially online. There's this constant balancing act, trying to be real versus performing for others.
Group chats, social media drama, dating rumors. It sounds exhausting.
It is. And they're dealing with more subtle stuff too, like low-key bullying, constant comparison, seeing digitally altered images, all while feeling this intense internal pressure to have it all figured out before high school starts.
And their language changes too. The sources said it gets sharper and riskier. What does that look like?
Well, they're testing out more mature language. Slang, definitely sarcasm, sometimes dark humor.
And using words as weapons sometimes.
Unfortunately, yeah. Those put-downs like you're cringe or irrelevant or calling someone fake, those words land hard at this age. They're figuring out social power dynamics.
And picking up scripts from online.
Totally. They absorb ways of talking from TikTok, Instagram, whatever platforms they're on, which can sometimes lead to trouble.
Oh, so?
Well, words like gay or autistic or even trauma get thrown around really casually, sometimes hurtfully, without maybe fully getting the weight. And humor can definitely be used to exclude or wound people.
So how do you address that?
Talk about it. Deconstruct it. What do you think people really mean when they say that? Or why do you think using gay as an insult became a thing? Get them thinking critically about the impact.
Makes sense. And this all ties into their online lives, this digital identity development happening in 8th grade.
Absolutely. This is prime time for actively shaping how they appear online. There's pressure to look good, have the right aesthetic, maybe even seem like they can monetize their life,
Performative living?
Kind of, yeah. And they're also more likely to stumble into, let's say, the less shiny corners of the internet.
So we can't control everything they see.
No way. But we can influence how they think about it. Ask questions. What parts of yourself feel okay to share online? What parts maybe not? Or if you could change one thing about the internet, what would it be?
Get those critical thinking gears turning.
Exactly.
Okay, all these changes, identity, social life, online world, inevitably shake up family dynamics too, right? Their role at home starts shifting.
Oh, big time. They desperately want to be treated more like adults, have more autonomy.
But they still need rules and boundaries.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
They still need that safety net, even if they push against it hard. You might see them pull away emotionally, seem less communicative. But they're still watching you, still learning from your exam.
And questioning the family rules and values more openly.
Yeah, that ideological independence really starts to kick in. Which brings us to some of those common pitfalls for parents or caregivers.
What should adults try not to do?
Okay. Assuming silence means everything's fine. Big mistake. They might just be internalizing things. Overhelping with school, like doing too much for them, undermines their confidence.
And dismissing their social drama.
Yes. Making their relationship stuff seem trivial. To them, it feels huge. Don't minimize it. And using fear about the future. If you don't do X, you'll never get into a good college. That usually just ramps up anxiety.
So what are better approaches? More effective ways to navigate this?
Move away from because I said so. Explain the why behind rules. Talk about how decisions affect the whole family.
More collaboration.
More discussion, definitely. Grant small freedoms as practice for bigger ones, like maybe negotiating a slightly later curfew, but with clear expectations about checking in. Build that trust.
And focus on respect.
Crucial. You're allowed to disagree with me. You're not allowed to be disrespectful while doing it. Holding that line is key.
Okay, pulling this together. If someone's supporting an 8th grader, what are the main what-to-do actions?
Be there consistently, even when they're prickly. Offer real responsibility chores, helping plan something, things that build competence.
Talk values, not just rules.
Yes. Talk about why things matter. Normalize confusion. Let them know it's okay not to have it all figured out. And tell them you're proud of who they're becoming, not just what they achieve, especially when they're unsure themselves.
I like that. What about mindset shifts for the adults? Any helpful reframes?
Yeah, the sources had some great ones. Instead of they're just being hormonal.
Which is so dismissive.
Right. Reframe it as, they're managing a huge rush of new chemicals, pressures, and growth all at once. If you think they don't want to talk,
try thinking.
They might not have the words yet or feel safe enough, but they still desperately need connection. Instead of, they should know better by now.
Acknowledge.
They're still practicing how to be better. They're learning. And the big one, if something seems trivial to you, but huge to them.
Remember.
But them, this is that deep, and that deserves respect, period.
Okay. Flip side. What are the definite don't do's? The things that really backfire.
Mocking their self-expression, clothes, music, whatever. Huge trust breaker, breeds shame. Micromanaging schoolwork kills their ownership.
Ignoring mental health signs.
Critical not to ignore those. Don't assume they don't care if their grades slip or they seem checked out.
Yeah.
It often masks something else.
Like anxiety or feeling overwhelmed.
Exactly. And don't minimize their relationships or identity stuff. It's central to their world right now.
We need to be watching for potential red flags too, right? Signs something more serious might be going on.
Yes, definitely. Things like a major drop in grades combined with being really emotionally up and down could point to depression, anxiety, social overwhelm.
What if they suddenly clam up about friends?
That could be a flag. Sudden silence about friends or school might mean isolation, maybe bullying, being excluded. Pay attention to that.
And hyper-focus on appearance.
Yeah, intense fixation on appearance or dieting could be body dysmorphia, maybe disordered eating starting. Also, watch out for kids who are too identified with being perfect or the smart one.
Why is that a flag?
It can signal burnout risk, or that their entire self-worth is tied to performance, which is fragile. And maybe frequent, intense romantic obsessions or crushing heartbreak could mean self-worth is too tied to getting validation from others.
Okay, so if we see flags or just want to be supportive, what are some practical tools or ideas for connecting?
Simple things can work well. Having regular low-stakes debrief chats. What was interesting about your day? Not just, how was school? Talking about the future in a hopeful way. What are you looking forward to about high school?
Involving them in setting boundaries.
Yes. What rules around phone use feel fair to you? Let's talk it through. Building their emotional vocabulary, helping them name feelings beyond mad or sad. An emotional language bank.
And for connection, just spending time.
Undivided time is gold. Maybe regular solo grown-up outings, even just errands. Let them teach you something they're into. Create regular opt-in check-ins, times they know they can talk if they want to, without pressure.
And better conversation starters than just, how was your day? Which usually gets a fine.
Yes. Try questions like, what do you think adults get wrong about teenagers? Or, what's one thing you wish adults would just stop doing?
Ooh, brave questions.
They can be. Or, is there anything you're curious about but you're not sure who to ask? Maybe, if you could redesign school, what would you change? Or, looking ahead, what kind of high schooler do you hope you'll be?
Those really open things up. Okay, one last thing. Any reflections for the caregivers themselves? Things we should be thinking about?
Definitely. Are we treating them like the person they're becoming, or still seeing the little kid? When they push back, are we reacting to the tone, or listening for the fear or need underneath?
Are we modeling what we preach?
Big time. Modeling making mistakes and fixing them. Modeling honesty. Modeling it's okay not to be perfect, to rest, to ask for help.
Making space for their independence without disconnecting.
Crucial balance. Defining what emotional safety really means at home. Showing them it's okay to change their mind as they learn more. And yeah, expressing pride in them.
Yeah.
Just for who they are on the journey.
Wow. This has been incredibly clarifying. 8th grade really is such a unique pressure cooker and transition point.
It really is. That bridge metaphor from the sources feels so right. Standing on a bridge, half built by the past, half reaching into the unknown.
And our job isn't to build it for them.
No, it's just to be there, holding the railing, offering steady support while they find their footing, even if they shrug off the hand sometimes.
That quiet faith, that consistent presence, they'll remember it.
They will, even if they don't say so now. It's this long goodbye to childhood, often awkward, definitely sacred in its own way, and yeah, often invaluable to the outside world.
So even if they don't express gratitude in the moment, this deep dive really underlines how much our presence, our respect, our steadiness matters in shaping who they become.
Absolutely. It's a foundation they're building on, whether they realize it yet or not.
Thanks for taking this deep dive with us today.